Ready when, okay. Well, good evening and welcome. The time is now 4:30, and I would like to call the August 22, 2024 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council to order. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
All right, just checking to make sure the mic. Everybody hear me? All right, is that better? Yep, it sounds like it's better. Kent Howe,
Here.
Cindy Condon,
Here.
Marcy Grail,
Here.
Ann Byer,
Here.
Richard Devlin,
Here.
Katie Imes.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Are there any agenda modifications?
Mr. Chair, no agenda modifications from the printed agenda, but I will clarify, when we originally had forecasted what we were going to do, we had the Boardman to Hemingway agenda item just on Friday and at the end. And so that's why it currently is listed as it's agenda item G, but we brought part of it forward to begin this at 4:30. And then we have a date and time certain for the Sunstone public hearing, which is at 5:30. So just because it's a little awkward, I thought I would clarify that a portion of the Boardman to Hemingway agenda item will occur tonight until we get to the 5:30. And then we will convert over to Sunstone, and then we will resume it back again tomorrow at the end of, as the last item on the agenda.
Right. Okay, sounds good. I have the following announcements. Comment registration cards for tonight's hearing are available on the table in the back of the room. For council members and anyone addressing the council, please remember to state your name clearly, and please do not use the speakerphone feature as it will create feedback. Please mute your phones, and if you are joining us by phone and receive a phone call, please hang up from this call and dial back in after finishing your other call. For those assigned onto the webinar, please do not broadcast your webcam. For tonight's public hearing, there are 3 ways to let us know you're interested in providing comments to the council. For those in person, please fill out a registration card available on the table and submit to Nancy Hatch. For those using the WebEx, you'll need to use the raise your hand feature. And for those on the phone only, you'll need to press *3, which will alert us that you want to speak. We'll go over these options again during that agenda item. If you want to receive future email notifications of council meetings, project milestones, or rulemakings through our Click Dimensions program, you can do so by clicking on the link in the agenda or on the council webpage. Look for the green box on the right-hand side of the page that says sign up for email updates. You are also welcome to access the online project mapping tool and any documents by visiting our website. Please note that the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and may be posted to the council's website following the meeting. Energy Facility Council meetings shall be conducted in a respectful and courteous manner where everyone's allowed to state their positions at the appropriate times consistent with the council rules and procedures. Willful, accusatory, offensive, insulting, threatening, insolent, or slanderous comments which disrupt the council meeting are not acceptable. Pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rule 345-011-0080, any person who engages in unacceptable conduct which disrupts the meeting may be expelled. So tonight we have the Boardman to Hemingway request for amendment 2. It's a council decision on request for a contested case. It's an action item, and we're going to get started with it. We'll finish it tomorrow, and we'll stop at 5:30 to move over to the Sunstone application. Kellen Tardyweather is the senior siting analyst that will take over now and lead us through this. Kellen, it's yours.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes.
For the record, this is Marcy Grail, and I will be recusing myself as I've done consistently through this project due to my former employment with PacifiCorp. So being that we have a crowded room, normally I would just hit the road and sit in the back, but I'm just going to sit here silently if that's okay. I'm getting it. It's okay. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grill. Okay, back to you, Kellen.
Okay, testing. Oh, it works.
I'll keep it away just because I tend to yell talk anyways. Okay, for the record, Kellen Tardyweather, Senior Siting Analyst, Oregon Department of Energy. Thank you, Chair Howe, members of the council. Thank you for being here. As Secretary Cornett mentioned, we decided to try to begin this agenda item because as council has seen at previous meetings and in your staff report, we kind of have a lot of material to cover today. This is just general agenda item overview. We're going to kind of begin a little bit of the background on the facility, and then we're just going to start into issues. I do want to say we do have our celebrity guest over here, Jesse Ratcliffe from Department of Justice. He is going to be counsel to council. So if you have some questions for him today, you can direct him, and then Patrick Rowe is going to be representing the department. And it's because we're at that a process step where we're in a juncture where we are talking about a potential contested case proceeding. And then if you want to give any, maybe later we'll give kind of options of, if we want to take a direction and talk about a topic or get advice, and Secretary Cornett and Mr. Ratcliffe can talk details about that. So I'm going to go back here. In this, and we'll of course get into the details. So we decided to kind of break out the review of the contested case requests by individual, and just to do it per issue. Because even though there's some issues people raise that are kind of similar, we just felt like it would be most direct and clear for anybody listening just to handle it that way. So hence, this is kind of a big agenda item. So this is our usual kind of chevron chart here. Trying to hide this thing, go away. So we are at later in the process, and we're at kind of in between a proposed order, possible contested case, and final order. So we're kind of in those last parts. We have I have another procedural history slide that I'm going to give a little bit more background on. I think it has dates next to it, so it kind of captures what's happened so far, I think, a little bit better. Maybe. No, go. No. One moment. Slides are not advancing. Okay, so what are we talking about? The Boardman to Hemingway transmission line is an approved facility. The originally approved facility, we call it the ASC approved facility, or the facility that was approved in the application for site certificate, is a 273-mile, predominantly 500 kV transmission line, crosses 5 counties in Oregon. It also includes related or supporting facilities, including a variety of different categories of roads, broken out on how much they would need to be, whether or not they're new or if they need to be substantially modified. It includes communication stations, polling and tensioning sites, and multi-use areas or temporary construction areas. This is a little bit, this graphic is kind of hard to see. The little map on the right shows you the ASC approved alternatives, because in the application, Idaho Power, the certificate holder, had a primary route, and then they had also alternative routes in different counties. And then in request for amendment 1, Idaho Power came in with 4 amended routes, small minor routes, that was approved by council in 2023. So similar, what they did in amendment 1 and what they're doing or proposing in amendment 2 is they're adding. This is additive, right? So they're not saying we're proposing this new route and asking council to remove its previous approval of this other route it replaced. They're functionally adding route alternatives to then select from a combination. So it's, conceptually a little bit difficult, because we see, we talk about the facility as a total acreage. So the acreage is getting bigger, but ultimately the final facility is going to be one route and, selection of routes and roads, not in this totality, because we're still just adding on.
And I'll bring that up again. Okay, so, all right, we're gonna go into what is included in Amendment 2. Well, it's kind of a big amendment. Some of it is just pretty straightforward information, such as similar as a request for Amendment 1, where we're adding in alternative transmission line and road routes. And then some of the other changes are, I would say, a little bit more kind of like conceptually difficult. One of them is Idaho Power is requesting to break apart the previously defined micrositing area and site boundary in the ASC and RFA 1. They were the same thing. They are now separating those definitions to where the micrositing area is the narrow transmission line corridor, where the final facility, which is about 500 feet, and then the final right-of-way would be about 300 feet. You'd be able to microsite it around in that 500 feet. And then they're expanding out the site boundary to half a mile in total, and which is a quarter mile on both sides. So, and what we're gonna talk about that more. I can stop now if we want to talk about it. I don't know if maybe it would. I can talk about it now if council has questions, or we can expand on it if council has any questions when we get to it related to an issue.
Any questions from council for now?
Just on this one aspect of RFA 2. Okay. Again, we'll talk about it more in advance, in anticipation of it being, maybe a little bit confusing, because now we're kind of using these terms separately. We did in the draft proposed order, we had a section in general standard of review, and in the front end of kind of describing the procedural history we tried to really kind of describe what this meant and the application of rules. So it's there, and then it came up in the comments on the draft proposed order. And so we responded to those in our responses to comments and in the current staff report for this proceeding today. All right, so that was one of the first things in Amendment 2. Second things in Amendment 2, we're adding on more transmission line and road alternatives. Idaho Power indicates that these alternatives are being proposed because they're continuing to hone in on their engineering of the facility, and much of it is driven by landowner preferences on their property. So it also includes a midline capacitor station. This is in the previously approved site boundary in Union County. They're requesting to increase the width of temporary roads. And then they are requesting to amend site certificate conditions. So here's our procedural history of where we've been to get us here today. So let's see, I think at my last presentation of council's review of the DPO, I said something to the effect of, our staff report for that and my presentation. I don't want any of the folks listening that came and commented and submitted a request to contest a case to feel like I'm at any means being dismissive, or that the department is being dismissive. The council understands that we deal with a great deal of volume of information. The staff reports that we've provided you, we actually managed to get this one for this particular process step down to 40 pages, and that is pretty snazzy. It's pretty good. So, and my job is to then continue to narrow and taper the information to then what is a few hour presentation. So that said, and I think as council read the request for contested case, there are reoccurring themes. A lot of the issues, which naturally that came up in the draft proposed order, are also the issues that came up in the request for contested case. So when we start going through some of these, I may spend time talking about one where we can talk about it. And then if another issue is kind of that same thing, I may route it back. We've responded to these issues now at length and in a great deal of detail. The same thing with the certificate holder in our responses to the DPO comments and in the attachment to the proposed order, and now in this staff report that accompanies, prepared for this council meeting. So I really want to point people there, and I think in my presentation today, I'll end up going to that staff report too, but I encourage people to read it. So the contested case threshold, sorry, yeah, Mr. Cornett.
For the record, Todd Cornett, just one more note on that point is, and if you said this and I didn't hear it, my apologies, but so as Kellen said, we summarize everything in a 40-page staff report, which, may or may not be summarized, but, it really truly is. But also all of the comments in their full form that were submitted or their contested case requests were also provided several weeks ago to council. So you've had those in addition to the staff report, you've had the contested case requests in their original form, also as part of your record to review as well. So I just wanted to make note of that.
No, I appreciate that because I didn't, we do make it a point that council receives everything that we receive. So, and council did receive those. So the contested case request for amendments, because there's not an automatic contested case for amendments. Council has to determine if an issue has been properly raised. So to do that, we have to make sure it's in the jurisdiction of the council, and that the individual, timely raised the comment either in person or in writing on the record of the DPO. And then with sufficient specificity to afford the council, the department, and the certificate holder an opportunity to respond. And that's including facts. We have to understand what the issue is to be able to respond to it. And that really is what sufficient specificity is intended to do. So if the council finds that the person requesting, if they failed to do any of the above, they must deny that request for contested case. So that's properly raised, right? And then there is, this interesting paragraph or 2 sentences. This is really the threshold, right? To determine that an issue justifies a contested case, council must find that it raises a significant issue of fact or law that's reasonably likely to affect the council's determination of whether the facility with that change proposed in the amendment meets an applicable law or council standard. So if you don't have jurisdiction over the issue, you must deny the request for contested case. So now there's a couple parts we're going to talk about this kind of over and over and over again. So it's like, we have issues of fact or law, but it has to be a significant issue or fact or law that is likely to affect your determination that the facility with that change meets a standard. So, which is interesting with that meeting a standard, and I kind of have this list of the standards over here. As council's familiar with your standards, the vast majority of your standards allow and contemplate that resources will be impacted and impacts may be mitigated. So really the question here, another way to kind of think about this is, is it likely that significant factor law, could impact council's, previous findings underneath the standard, which means mitigation can't solve that, right? Or is the issue, could it be mitigated? Is it already addressed by one of those site certificate conditions, a representation, one of the plans that we talk about? So does that kind of make sense like that? So that's, okay. All right, so we're here. Oh, I think that's nice. So your options. So if we meet that threshold, so council can decide to hold the contested case. And if that is the pathway that we go down, I think Jesse Ratcliffe, Mr. Ratcliffe, can help you determine what to do. Your rules also give some direction, like if council decided to hold a contested case on one or more of these issues, we can look over to the rules, because you would have to designate what that issue is, and then you would be limiting the parties to the issues properly raised. So there's additional steps we would do, but you have that to go. We can hold a contested case if it meets that threshold. If also you still meet that threshold of where it is a significant issue or fact or law that is likely to affect your determination that a standard's met, which means taking into consideration mitigation. But you could fix it with a change in the proposed order, which usually would mean like you would be changing a condition, and not just like a minor administrative edit or something. And you can change it in the proposed order. And then that means that you would basically send it back to staff and we would reissue the proposed order, reissue notice of an opportunity to request a contested case limited to that, the issue and the change we made. And then we circulate it back and then we would be back here to revisit that if any requests came in. So that's option 2. Or option 3 is you can deny the request for contested case. And then if that is the outcome for all of the requests for contested case, then just like with amendments that receive no request for contested case, you're basically reviewing the proposed order as the final order. And so we can, if council wanted to make any changes to the proposed order or had any questions that like weren't related to any of the contested case requests, we could look at those, but your what is under consideration if the requests are denied is the proposed order as the final order. That's at least how the department is recommending it. So I'm going to pause. Are we good? So we're just going to launch into the issues. I also want to be mindful. Is that correct? So if I'm looking at one, okay, because we do have our DPO hearing at 5:30. So I think that, well, we're just going to proceed ahead. Okay. I'm actually going to pull up the staff report that we generated for this council meeting, because I think that it's a little bit easier. It might be a lot of information, but it kind of helps. It'll help us guide the conversation, particularly with Kevin March, because this is a really big issue. In your staff report, we had a table in the front end that gave a very truncated issue statement. And I did those just to kind of capture what, if they didn't provide a real short abbreviated issue statement, I tried to capture what I thought the issue was. So what you see up here is me trying to capture that. But in your staff report, I gave you what they gave us. So I think it might also help for council to see, because maybe you are seeing something different in an issue statement than maybe we saw. And if you want to talk about that, we can. So let me see if I can pull that up here. And that I have the proper screen. No, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, hold on. All right. All right, let me close this. All right, move you over here. I think we're big enough. I'm going to try to make this bigger. So, okay, so there's a lot in here. We did say Kevin March did properly raise this issue, right? He provided facts, he provided pictures. His concerns are about ephemeral and intermittent streams that he knows the location of, and he, says that they are not included in the amendment and could be impacted. And this is, again, me just paraphrasing. It's pretty difficult here. This is, right. This is the issue statement. And really, it's hard because how we and council kind of pack these issues away is that it's usually, it's related to a standard or a rule, right? So in this case, we're bringing up fish and wildlife habitat, fish passage, and maybe like removal fill law, because we're talking about waterways, waters of the state. Ephemeral streams, because this comes up a lot, are basically intermittent, or it's like a temporary streams that occur, waterways that occur just after a water event or a rain event. So that's, I know this comes up, but for people who aren't familiar with the term, that's what we're talking about here. So in this second column, this is, oh, and then we generated this table from the table that had, the DPO comment, the certificate holders' responses, and the department's, responses and recommendations in the proposed order. So this is generally their DPO comment, which is, it says a summary, but it generally is kind of copy and paste of what they said. And then over in this column of whether or not it's properly raised, we included the information kind of verbatim. I didn't paraphrase this. I didn't edit this, because I want council to be able to see what they're, what they're presenting is their issue. And I'm not modifying it. And then over in this column, this is our suggestions. So these are the reasons why for this issue, we don't think a contested case should be granted. So, and again, it's a little bit hard because we are touching on potentially multiple, jurisdictions or standards or laws. One of the important ones is ephemeral streams aren't, under the jurisdiction of DSL, or they're required to be delineated, but when it comes to whether or not it is included, and you can correct me because Jesse has worked with DSL for a lot, they aren't included in like a removal fill permit. So, but they are by DSL, Department of State Land Standards, they are included in wetland delineations. So that's just kind of how that would be packed away legally if we're looking through it through the lens of DSL laws. But when we're talking about potential impacts to ephemeral streams are, they are kind of protected, or impacts to them are under the 1200C permit and an erosion sediment and control plan, which also does have restoration, revegetation standards within there. So those streams are included in that, which I have so it's a soil protection condition. And back in Amendment 1, council amended that condition to give the department the authority to modify that 1200C or any of those, if we're seeing an issue on site, because this is a federally delegated permit by DEQ, and DEQ's out there enforcing this as well. But if we see something on site that we feel like needs to be addressed, that change in that condition gives us the ability to like require or change any of the best management practices, or if there's an issue with runoff or sedimentation, we can require a change in that as well. Yes.
Counselor Byer?
This is Counselor Byer. Just a quick question on the 1600C permit. It looks as if the DSL permit has to be provided prior to construction. It looks as if from your summary that the 1200C permit. Got it. Thank you. Has already been issued. So based on your summary of the First Amendment, where we have the ability to revisit that 1200C permit, does that ability to revisit address some of the concerns raised by Mr. Marsh? Because we have some new areas with the change in the micrositing where things may be impacted that weren't considered in that original permit. Do you see what I'm saying?
I think I see what you're saying, and it's a good comment. So, and it's interesting because again, we're different. We're looking at different agencies. So DSL is going to be working with the removal fill permit And that is in the context of impacts to waters of the state and wetlands, which is permissible. They have the removal fill permit. It was actually underneath council's jurisdiction. And then they have a lot of measures with that, and they have a offsite mitigation site. That's like a whole nother thing. So that's over there. And but indeed, if we're talking about these ephemeral streams, then like we just said, that's not really, they're delineated, but not included in like that offsite mitigation or any of the things that they would have to do under that removal fill permit. So we're going over to the 1200C, which is the Department of Environmental Quality now. And then Sarah has more details on this, but because she's really, running the compliance. And so she's talking to DEQ frequently. And it sounds like they're going to be updating and issuing the 1200C, well, like every couple weeks the erosion and sediment control plan, about every 2 weeks, having Idaho Power. Okay, so Idaho Power, because the erosion and sediment control plan, that's really kind of the important stuff. That's saying this is where we're working. These are our BMPs, our best management practices we're going to apply in these areas. And I guess it's, don't think of this as like a one-time permit. This is going to be ongoing. It's intended to govern, construction sites and exactly for the issues that we're talking about. And because this is like kind of a long duration, more complicated facility, but this is the same for any construction project. It is going to be adapted and modified as necessary throughout construction. Is that, yeah, Councilmember Byer.
Just to follow up then, in response to Mr. Marsh, I think we can say that the permit is adaptive to address concerns about ephemeral streams that might not have been originally identified, but there is a mechanism in place to address his concerns.
Yeah, I would say that he gives specific coordinates for his understanding of these ephemeral waterways, to which the certificate holders indicated one of them is not in a construction work area. So if that wouldn't be impacted. And then the other one, as we've provided in our response, it was indeed delineated in the wetland delineation.
Okay,
So-
so we're addressing the concerns that were raised that are relevant.
Right.
Thanks.
And right. And just, and it's hard because, I'm sure that there's resources out there that may have been missed, right? But a lot of those pre-construction conditions or ongoing construction conditions are intended and designed to address inadvertent, say inadvertent discoveries, but that's a term really used in cultural. So, or like coming across resources that maybe you didn't anticipate, because that will happen, right? And so this kind of goes to that threshold of the contested case. Is the mitigation in place sufficient to ensure that, because we're kind of talking under the 1200C, we're actually moving over into soil protection standard, but then we're also having this nexus with, maybe removal fill. I do want, and then there is also the contention that there's this stream flow duration assessment methods, the SDAM protocols weren't followed, which also, anyhow, so with, matters like this, as with a lot of council standards don't prescribe a particular methodology when it comes to, us relying on a sister state agency for their expertise in a matter. We generally, if it is an accepted protocol or methodology that is accepted in the field and by that agency, that is the standard that we would like to see. So then that's not what DSL has their methods for identifying wetlands and waterways, which isn't exclusive to that, but apparently that they do actually, it does partially include using those protocols. So That is our answer. So one, I think indeed, one of the water, intermittent streams that he's identified, we actually have also identified. The other one wouldn't be impacted. However, for anything else out there, the question is are the conditions of mitigation in place sufficient to ensure that they would be mitigated? And our recommendation is that yes, they would.
Counselor Devlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In this particular case, since these permits are going to be ongoing from the Division of State Lands and from ODFW, how does the party that's requesting the contested case know or have input into ODFW or the Division of State Lands addressing these issues?
So how would Mr. March know kind of what our answers are here?
Yeah, or that the agencies are actually looking at these issues, or that they will examine them during the permitting process as it goes on.
Well, I'm, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess, because I think Mr. March demonstrates a passion and a knowledge for, these items, but to me, you would have to understand, or at least look through the draft proposed order to find the corresponding section to see where at least these are mentioned, Mr. Bennett.
For the record, Todd Cornett. So, you've seen the site certificate. There are any number of conditions, and, it's not like they're going to meet each condition once, through each segment of construction of this 278-mile long facility. They're going to have to meet these conditions again and again and again for each segment. And so there's a tremendous amount of work evaluating those. And so we don't have existing, our process isn't we don't provide that information out there on our website or, kind of an update to that, but we are constantly checking those things, documenting that they're being done, which is all public record. So any of that information can be requested and can be looked at any time. We just don't have a protocol where we're putting it out there because, like the application, like the draft proposed order, it's a tremendous volume of information, but it is a public record. I mean, anything that's not, subject to non-disclosure, such as cultural resource information or some specific, threatened and endangered species, it is all public record. So,
I'm going to add to that. At any time, if a member of the public believes that there is a site certificate condition that is not being met, they can request the department to conduct an inspection. So in this instance, if Mr. March believed that there was an ephemeral stream that was not adequately being accounted for under it's actually a DEQ administered permit, Department of Environmental Quality administers the 1200C permits, he could contact us. We could determine, is there an ephemeral stream that's not being accounted for? And then, as Kellen has described, we could work with the Department of Environmental Quality and make sure that that is folded into the erosion and settlement control plan, which is a part of a 1200C permit. I want to make sure you guys understand what a 1200C permit is. That's a Clean Water Act permit. The intent of it, the C stands for construction. So the intent of a 1200C permit is to make sure that construction activities aren't negatively impacting waters of the state. So the entire time that they are in construction, they have to comply with their 1200C. One aspect of a 1200C permit is an erosion and sediment control plan. That plan makes sure that there's nothing you're doing on site that is going to run off and get into waters of the state, including ephemeral streams. So if Mr. March is concerned that there's something that has not been identified, one, Idaho Power's team will see it on the ground and they should fold that in, but if into their 1200C erosion and sediment control plan. But if we learn about it, we have a compliance team. The compliance team working with DEQ would confirm whether or not it's there. If they think it is there, then it would be worked into the 1200C permit.
Mr. Chairman,
Counselor Devlin?
I appreciate both explanations. And my issue here basically is with this particular issue being brought before us, asking for a contested case, is in looking at what the party has brought forward and what the staff response is that to what's being brought forward. I don't see a contested case being a way to resolve this issue. I think the issue would be resolved in the permit process. Then,
Yeah.
knowing a little bit more than I should about salmon restoration from previous history, I do know that sometimes people have done extensive, like LiDAR analysis to look at where intermittent streams and some cases ephemeral streams are. But without a whole history, you don't really know that how often they are ephemeral streams. And it probably gets very site specific. But I don't see Ms. March actually resolving this issue in a contested case. And fundamentally, what I see is that it went to a contested case, the hearings officer would come up with the same conclusions that staff came up with.
Okay, Vice Chair Condon?
Thank you, Cindy Condon for the record. And I agree with Counselor Devlin. And I want to make sure that I understand what Mr. Rose said, that we are the agency or the department that the public we're the touch point, and they're in to watch, to speak to the issues they have about this project. That's what I heard, is that they make their call and remark to staff, and staff can follow up if they believe there's a reason to.
Yeah, and that's true, not just for this issue. As I said, anytime someone
Yeah.
believes, if they think a site certificate condition is not being complied with, they can certainly contact us.
Yeah.
And we'll go out and conduct an inspection.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical point to make to the public. But also I want to understand our role with respect to a compliance check. So we go onto the site or go to the site and notice something. Is that a report that is made, it's documented, I'm sure, and then followed up on? Is there some expectation that the site certificate holder, once they find it, they report that, hey, we found wetlands, ephemeral stream, whatever, that comes under, that would come under this permit? How does that whole process work?
Well, there is reporting required as part of construction compliance.
And to us, so you would know, or we would know.
I think it just, it's gonna be, and Sarah can speak to it, but, if the exact way, like, will you know the next day that one day you come across an ephemeral stream and then we're gonna trigger, it is gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of stuff happening. And there's
Right.
going to be a lot of people out there watching everything that's happening because this is because it's a big project. So yes, you will know all of the things that come across. You will know that we have decided to exercise modifying the 1200, the BMPs under the 1200C permit by exercising the condition. You'll know that, there is a buffer or setback. We found a nest for a raptor and it's here, and then we're going to do this. And, how immediately we're going to know that, there is like, what is it? Semi-annual construction reporting by the mandatory condition. Yeah, get upstairs like, oh, compliance.
Good evening, council members. This is Senior Policy Advisor Sarah Esterson. So there's a myriad of rules, mandatory conditions, rules, and then additional conditions that require reporting of noncompliance or violations. You'll actually see it tomorrow. All incidents and compliance issues we bring to you in the council secretary report at every meeting. So the same would apply. I mean, we have a project under construction that you'll kind of see like the volume of issues that we're running into tomorrow. So it's a really good test run. But yeah, so if the certificate holder is self-reporting, the rules aren't overly specific, but it's as soon as reasonably possible. And then in other instances, our rules require 72-hour reporting. It kind of depends on the severity of the issue. And there's a lot of things that you can violate without it being all that big of a deal from environmental or public health and safety. But the more severe, the more tight the reporting requirement is.
But the reason I ask is, I do think a contested case is wouldn't be an approach that would work for this, and the conditions provided that all the compliance is in place, works. And, yeah, so.
Counselor Byer?
Thank you. Just a quick observation. If someone sees a violation of a DEQ permit, they can directly work with DEQ to say, hey, there's sediment in this stream. It may be ephemeral, it may be free flowing all year long, but they can work directly with DEQ on that permit violation. So it's a pretty clean pathway for resolution. I do think it's important to note that these permit conditions can be modified or adapted as we modify or as we look at these amendments to incorporate any new areas and any new information. So thank you for that clarification.
Counselor Devlin, did I hear possibly a motion?
Back to that portion. Mr. Chair, I move council find Kevin March properly raised March issue 1 as described in Oregon Administrative Rules 345 Division 027, Section 371, parentheses 7, parentheses A, but that the council deny the request for contested case on March issue 1 because for the reasons provided in the department's August 2024 staff report, March issue 1 does not raise a significant issue of fact or law that is reasonably likely to affect the council's determination whether the facility with the change proposed by the amendment meets the applicable laws and council standards.
Thank you. We've got a motion. Is there a second? Counselor Byer?
I second the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Secretary Cornett, could you?
Discussion.
Oh, yeah. Is there any discussion? Counselor
Just-
Byer?
Just to make it clear that this finding is based on the discussion and the reference to the conditions that allow these other permits to be updated as construction occurs. So that the mitigation that's already built into the site certificate addresses the issue at hand.
Okay. Secretary Cornett, can you call the roll?
Ann Byer,
Yes.
Ken Howe,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Yes.
Katie Imes,
Yes.
Cindy Condon.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we've got next are 4 issues from Ms. Irene Gilbert.
All right, so I think, and just due to time, I think we can get through Ms. Gilbert's issue 1. So this is issue statement, and with these issue statements, these are the ones that she provided in her request for contested case, so I'm not paraphrasing it here. So it's that the RFA 2, that the proposed order fails to require a full review of the area added to the site boundary as required under Division 27-03752. This is just, we're gonna talk about it a lot. It's my favorite new rule. It's your scope of review for amendments, which is the way I like to think about it in my brain, are the questions that council is asked when reviewing various types of amendments, because as you are familiar, there are lots of different types of amendments that come across the table. So let me. Our recommendation on this issue is no, that it doesn't raise to the threshold for a contested case. Yeah, again, actually, I'm gonna go back to my table, just so we can kind of see what, so I'm not paraphrasing anything here. So, this is the contested case request. So, that under the general standard of review, Ms. Gilbert, that, a full review of the expanded site boundary must be done. And, let me just, so there is some, a landowner, anyways, sorry. And we talked about this. This is similar to, the issue raised in the DPO with the expanded site boundary. I feel like we talked about it at length. There's language in, the scope of council's review for amendment that states that for a request for amendment, adding area to the site boundary, the council must determine that the preponderance of evidence on the record supports the conclusion that that portion of the facility added by the amendment complies with the laws and standards that would apply to an original application for site certificate. That's not saying that we're going back and and applying all of the rules and standards to the entire facility. So for that previously approved facility, the ASC and RFA 1, and now RFA 2, what that's saying is if today a new application was submitted, these would be all the rules that apply to that application. And so all of those rules that would apply to a new application submitted today is what applies to those areas we're adding to the site boundary, those micro-siting areas. And then we have the expanded site boundary. So again, this is the issue kind of has lots of sub-issues. So my answer to that first part of the interpretation of what scope of council's review is no. That language doesn't mean that we're going back and applying all of what, we're not reopening what council previously approved if it's not implicated by the amendment. But that said, we do know that we are expanding the site boundary around most of the facility, including the new pieces that were proposed in RFA 2 and around the previously approved routes. So, but the micro-siting corridor, the areas that were surveyed previously stay the same, and we're just adding this site boundary around it and consistent with council's, review and approval for other facilities. Council's determined the appropriateness and supported by your, the rules and definitions that really just the micro-siting areas, anywhere where a final facility component could be located, those are the areas that would need field surveys underneath the standards that require field surveys. Council does not need to demonstrate that the preponderance of evidence supports its findings underneath the standards that an entire wider site boundary would need to be field surveyed. Council is satisfied with the demonstration that standards can be met where a larger site boundary is evaluated and resources characterized by using like literature reviews, desktop studies, that is sufficient for council to establish what resources are out there. And that is what was provided in RFA 2. So we have separate map sets for that expanded area showing, like the seismic underneath the structural standard and this categorization of soils. So we've gone through and we've looked at those areas. So that's kind of what our response is there. And then, as we talked about, and maybe this is a good time we can just jump because this is the first time it comes up. Because then this also, the expanded site boundary, I'm gonna start talking faster because I'm gonna try to get done at 5:30. But also don't rush, because we can also, Todd, we can start the hearing a little bit later. Okay, so I don't want you to feel rushed, council. We can also like pick it up tomorrow, but anyways. The expanded site boundary is also to support Idaho Power's, also just to support the complexity of this facility and their continued negotiations with landowners. And we talked about this at length. We heard a lot at the DPO hearing. We talked, the certificate holder provided their response to the DPO comments. And then we talked a lot in our review of the DPO. And then in the proposed order, we're proposing a new condition that's based off of what Idaho Power represented in their responses to DPO comments, because landowners were really worried about that this expanded site boundary means that that is some area where Idaho Power could then put anything, move anything around, and that's not the case. Council's approval would only be an approval is for those micrositing areas previously approved, and for RFA2, it would only be that the facility components could be put in those micrositing areas. The expanded site boundary is more of, I don't know, a conceptual exterior boundary that we've looked at for the existence of resources to inform our process and, you know, what is out there. And then Idaho Power represented this condition that we imposed under, or recommended adopted under general standard of review, where they said in any ADR, in any amendment determination request, they'll submit a landowner letter, a letter that is indicating a landowner's consent for that change on the property. Because as we heard from some individuals, that of their concerns of being able to put things anywhere or move the facility around on their property, Idaho Power indicated that's not the case. So no new property owners would be implicated. So, I can go because I kind of want in areas, and frankly, in response to the DPO comments and in the proposed order, we really didn't make a lot of changes. We did, in response to comments, and any of the changes we did do are in, red line.
Any questions from council?
So, and yeah, and I guess related, just to remind council, the ADR, an amendment determination request, is appropriate in areas like if, where basically a certificate holder wants to do a change that's within the site boundary, but like outside of a micrositing area. They have the option, they can either submit an amendment and just come in for an amendment, or they can go in through an ADR process, and if they go through an ADR process, functionally what Idaho Power is representing is that it would be an additional information piece in that this allows the department to ask for that as part of an ADR. When, otherwise, generally, council wouldn't see conditions in a site certificate that basically say, hey, go do a process. Because this is just in the amendment rules, available to all certificate holders. So, go back to my staff report to see if there's anything. So for those reasons, we don't think, we're recommending that it does not meet the threshold.
Okay, do we have a motion from council member on Ms. Gilbert's issue number 1? Councilor Devlin.
Mr. Chair, I move council find Irene Gilbert properly raised Gilbert issue 1 as described in Oregon Administrative Rules 345, Division 027, Section 0371, Parent 7, Parent A. But the council denied the request for a contested case on Gilbert issue 1 because the reasons provided in the department's August 13, 2024 staff report regarding Gilbert issue 1 does not raise a significant issue of fact or law that is reasonably likely to affect the council's determination whether the facility with the change proposed by the amendment meet the applicable laws and council standards.
Thank you, Councilor Devlin. Do we have a second?
Counselor Condon seconds that.
Any discussion? Okay, Secretary Cornett, could you please call the roll?
Katie Imes,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Aye.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Cindy Condon,
Yes.
Ann Byer.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Cornett. It's 5:30. So we'll switch gears now over to the Sunstone Solar Project.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Thank you, Ms. Tardy-Weather.
We got it done. You're gonna be our designated motion.
The Sunstone Project is an application for site certificate. We're going to conduct a public hearing on the draft proposed order. We have Christopher Clark, Senior Siting Analyst, that will be providing an overview of the proposed facility and
Hey,
site.
can we get people to, hey, excuse me, can we have people stop talking? We're trying to conduct a public hearing, and so we need everybody to be able to hear what's going on.
An information portion provided by Senior Siting Analyst Chris Clark, who will provide a brief overview of the agenda item and the request, and a public hearing in which I will serve as the presiding officer. Mr. Clark, please proceed with the information portion of the agenda item. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Chair Howe. Council members, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Do my best. For the record, my name is Christopher Clark. I'm a senior siting analyst with the department. As Chair Howe said, I'm going to be giving a brief overview of the proposed facility before the hearing tonight. I just wanted to make a couple informational points. One, this is now the draft proposed order for the Sunstone Solar Project. I did just want to point out that there is a public comment period tomorrow for other issues. So if you were hoping to address the council about something else, that would be the appropriate time to do that. I also wanted just to bring up that we found out there was an issue with the comment portal and being able to submit comments on this project since this afternoon. So if anybody is online or has comments that they wanted to provide electronically, you can still email me at the email address on the notice. That's christopher.clark@energy.oregon.gov. That'll go up on the screen a little later, but we do need to receive comments by the end of the hearing tonight, which is the close of the public record. Great. So with that, I'll get started with the overview. We are ahead of where we should be by about 20 slides. Slide 32 is where we should be. Slide 32. It's okay. Great, thank you. And I'll go one ahead. Oh, sorry, one more slide. Great. So as a brief overview of the Energy Facility Siting Council's review process, since its establishment in 1975, the council's primary mandate has been to set standards for the review of large-scale energy projects and to review proposed projects for compliance with those standards, as well as other applicable state laws and local land use regulations. Generally, those standards are related to site-specific locational issues that may be affected by a particular facility. And I just want to point out that matters not related to siting the facility, such as worker safety, labor regulations, and operational issues like land acquisitions, leases, and easements are outside of the scope of the council's review. The council itself is a 7-member body. The council members are appointed by the governor and approved by the Oregon Senate, and all members serve in a volunteer capacity and represent diverse professional backgrounds from across the state. The Oregon Department of Energy's Siting Division, or ODO Siting Division, serves as staff to the council, and while staff like me make recommendations to the council, only the council has the authority to decide whether or not to approve an application for site certificate or make other final siting decisions. Next slide, please. Great. So tonight, the council will hear public testimony on the draft proposed order on the application for site certificate for the Sunstone Solar Project. The project's proposed by Sunstone Solar LLC, which is a subsidiary of Pine Gate Renewables LLC. This proposed facility would consist of a 1,200 megawatt solar photovoltaic power generation facility with related or supporting facilities, including up to 7,200 megawatt hours of battery energy storage capacity, substations, operations and maintenance buildings, transmission lines, roads, and fencing. The proposed facility would occupy up to 9,442 acres within a 10,960 acre site in Morrow County. The site consists of private land that's currently zoned for exclusive farm use. So this is the hearing on the draft proposed order. The draft proposed order, or DPO, as it's commonly referred to, contains the department's initial recommendations on the proposed facility's compliance with applicable standards, laws, rules, and ordinances. The recommended findings in the DPO are based on the information provided in the application for site certificate, as well as the department's consultation with other state agencies, local governments, and tribes. The issuance of the DPO comes after several rounds of public engagement during the review of the notice of intent and the completeness review of the application. Tonight's hearing and the associated comment period, which closes at the end of tonight's hearing, are intended to provide interested members of the public an opportunity to express views or raise any concerns with the proposed facility and recommended findings in the DPO. After the close of the hearing and public comment period, the department will prepare a proposed order with final recommendations based on our consideration of public comments in any direction provided by the council during your review next month. The proposed order will be subject to a contested case proceeding conducted by a hearing officer conducted by the council. Great, and next slide. So the applicant submitted the NOI for this project in May of 2022. We held an informational meeting on the NOI in Boardman and then issued a project order in September of that year. The applicant then submitted their preliminary application in August of 2023. The department conducted its completeness review in consultation with reviewing agencies. And after receiving additional information that had been requested from the applicant, we determined the application to be complete in May of this year. We had an informational meeting on the complete application, also in Boardman earlier this year in June, I believe. And the DPO itself was issued on July 12th, which initiated a 41-day comment period that, again, ends with tonight's hearing. And then, just as I mentioned, we'll continue to review comments received on the record of the hearing. And our current plan is to present our recommendations for the proposed order to the council at your September meeting. And then we expect to issue the proposed order shortly after that, which will give a more final timeline. Next slide, please. Okay, I just want to briefly go over a few issues that we thought would be of interest to the council and to public commenters that are in the DPO. The first has to do with the applicant's proposed construction schedule, and it's addressed under the general standard of review. And so just for a little context, at maximum build out, the applicants proposed that the facility would be constructed in 6 200 megawatt phases over nearly a 4-year period. Since it's relevant to the public services discussion as well, I wanted to show that this graphic with the applicant's projected workforce numbers and the graph on the slide, you can see that the 6 phases would be staggered over the period, with each phase taking just under 2 years. The two phases would commence in any given year. So there would be up to 4 phases, 4 of those 200 megawatt phases in construction at any given time. And during those peak periods, the applicant estimates that there would be up to 900 to 950 workers on the site each day. So that's just a little context for later, but back to the schedule. The applicant requested that the deadline to begin construction be set at 3 years from the date of the council's approval. And then has requested an additional 3 years after that date to complete construction for a total of 6 years. In recent orders, at least, the council has been tying the construction completion deadline to the date that construction actually starts and not that approval date. So a certificate holder would typically have 3 years from their start point to finish construction. If you could move to the next slide, please. For this project, given the extended construction timeline, we're recommended that the applicant be given 3 years to start construction on the first phase, and then 4 years from the date of approval to start construction of the last phase that they're going to build. And then once that last phase starts, they have 2 additional years to wrap up construction on the entire project. That condition should accommodate the applicant's proposed schedule if they don't wait for the full 3 years to get started. If they do wait, they would probably not have time to build all 6 phases and would likely need to either change the facility design or seek an extension from the council. I kind of wanted to bring this up mostly, not because we think it's very controversial, but because it's a unique condition and it's different than what the council has considered before. So if there's any questions on this now, I'm happy to take them. I'll also go over it again in September if it's not clear. Okay, next. Oh, already there. For the soil protection standard, really just wanted to highlight that this applicant has made some commitments in their application to minimize the amount of disturbance within the energy facility footprint by limiting grading to areas where slopes and gradients are too steep to install the racking system for their solar modules, and to other areas where they're installing components with foundations or gravel pads. We support these commitments, and we also see them as binding representations and have recommended the council impose conditions requiring a vegetation and grading plan to demonstrate compliance with those representations. Moving into land use, which is potentially one of the more complex, I think, standards to address for this facility. The facility would use approximately 9,442 acres of land zone for exclusive farm use. That's within their larger 10,000, almost 11,000 acre site. Virtually all the areas that are proposed to be occupied by facility components are currently used for dry land wheat production. Some of that land is also considered high value farmland because of existing water rights. You can see the authorized places of use of those water rights on the slide in the areas shaded blue. Because the facility would use more land allowed than what's allowed under LCDC's land use standards for solar facilities and the implementing ordinances in Morrow County zoning ordinance, the applicants requested that the council take an exception to statewide planning goal 3, which is the goal established to preserve and maintain agricultural lands. And next slide, please. The council has a few pathways to take a goal exception and to find compliance for a facility that doesn't comply with a goal. The relevant pathway here is what's commonly referred to as a reasons exception. I've put the standards that must be met for the council to grant a reasons exception on the screen. And there's kind of 3 criteria that all have to be satisfied. One is that there's reasons which justify why the state policy embedded in the goal should not apply. The second is that the significant environmental, economic, social, and energy consequences anticipated as a result of the proposed facility have been identified, and that adverse impacts will be mitigated in accordance with the rules of the council applicable to the siting of the proposed facility. And 3, that the proposed facility is compatible with other adjacent uses or will be made compatible through measures designed to reduce adverse impacts. And I'll be coming back to these, but for that first prong, the applicant provided the 6 reasons to support its exception request. The 6 reasons that are shown on the screen. The first is that the facility is locationally dependent because of proximity to existing infrastructure, including energy infrastructure, the regional grid, and major transportation corridors. The second reason provided was that the facility is located on water challenged land and does not impact irrigated crops, and imposes minimal direct impacts to high value soils and due to lack of available irrigation water. The third reason was that the facility preserves water supply in the Butter Creek critical groundwater area for the benefit of other irrigators who rely on the same limited groundwater resources. The fourth is that the facility creates local economic benefit and mitigates economic impacts to the local agricultural economy. The fifth is that the facility imposes minimal impacts to other resources protected by council standards. And the sixth is that the facility responds to important state goals and county goals and priorities, such as the state renewable portfolio standards, and then other local goals found in the county's comprehensive plan. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to focus on just a couple of these. First is that in support of their local economic benefit reason, the certificate holder has acknowledged that removal of up to 9,442 acres of farmland from production will indirectly impact the local agricultural economy. And they propose to mitigate those impacts by contributing $1,179 per acre of farmland occupied by the facility to an agricultural mitigation fund that would be administered by the county. There's more details about how exactly that fund would be ran and how projects that would receive funding would be selected. I won't go into too much detail here, but I'm sure you'll hear more about it later. Under that program, the total contribution for the maximum build out of the facility would be approximately $11 million. So not an insignificant investment, I guess, in the local economy. If you could move to the next slide. So we've recommended that reasons 1, which was locational dependence, 2, that the facility is located on water challenged lands, and 3, that there's minimal impacts to other resources be accepted by the council, and that those reasons together justify taking an exception to goal 3. I just want to point out that we have recommended that the council deny the local economic benefit reason, partially because we recommend that the proposed agricultural mitigation that I just explained should not be relied upon as a reason for the exception, but rather supports a finding that impacts on the local agricultural economy would be sufficiently mitigated under that second prong, which is that the environmental, social, energy, and economic impacts, that's probably not the right order, but it's the right letters, would be sufficiently mitigated, and that impacts have been identified. Okay, for retirement and financial assurance, we have reviewed the estimates provided by the applicant. We came up with a similar but slightly higher number to them. And so our recommendation is that the cost that would be required for the state to retire the facility and restore the site would be approximately $117.95 million in 2023 dollars. The applicant did provide a comfort letter stating that MUFG Bank would be comfortable with providing a letter of credit up to $120 million to the applicant. So we do recommend that they've demonstrated that they could meet that requirement. We've recommended conditions be imposed to require the bond and bond to be provided prior to the beginning of construction and maintained for the life of the facility, which are kind of the very standard conditions. Okay, and I think that was the last. Oh, and then for public services, thank you, Nancy. I kind of went over the estimates of workers that would be on the site. That's not a small number of workers. The estimate was that over the 4-year period, the average would be 682 workers on the site each day. But as I mentioned, during those peak construction periods, it would be up to 950 workers. The department has recommended findings reflecting that there are potential impacts on construction, traffic, potential impacts on traffic safety and housing that could result from construction-related traffic and the influx of new people into communities in this area. We've recommended some conditions, including public services conditions 1 and 2, which require development and implementation of a road use agreement with the county. Public services conditions 3 and 4, which is a pretty unique condition for this project, or at least new, that would require development and implementation of a temporary housing plan that identifies strategies to minimize impacts to local housing supply. And I'll point out that that was something proposed by the applicant, and I think does go further than some projects to address housing issues here. Okay. So just to kind of quickly go over what public participation looks like during this phase of the process. The issuance of the draft proposal order initiates an opportunity for public comment on the application. There was a notice issued back on July 12th that gave details about the public hearing. And how to provide comments include providing an email to me. Again, if you have a comment that you want to provide in email, my email will be up on the screen, but it's christopher.clark, C-L-A-R-K, @energy.oregon.gov. And then you can also provide public testimony here tonight, whether you're in person or on the webinar or on the phone. We just want to make it very clear, and this information will be provided a few more times, that anyone who wants to participate beyond this point in the process must raise an issue on the record, either in person tonight or by sending a written comment to Odo before the close of the hearing. Failure to raise a relevant issue either orally in the hearing or in a timely submitted written comment will preclude further participation in the FSIC process, either in the contested case or potentially in the judicial review after the contested case. Great. And so just to restate that one more time, the council won't accept written comments on the application or on the DPO after the close of the public hearing tonight, unless the council itself grants an extension. Only persons who comment on the DPO on the record are eligible to participate in the contested case proceeding. And then if you are considering submitting a comment that you think may be a basis for a contested case, any issues within those comments must be submitted timely. They must be within the council's jurisdiction, and they must be raised with sufficient specificity to afford the council, the department, and the certificate holder, or the applicant in this count, an adequate opportunity to respond, including a statement of facts that supports that person's issue, that person's position on the issue. To go over what the council's received to date, I think I have given the council updated comments through the close of business yesterday. That included 24 public comments. We received 3 more comments before the start of the hearing, and I see I have something in my inbox, so we may have gotten a few more. So in total, that is 27 comments as of the start of the hearing, with 25 letters of support from local landowners, community organization, labor unions, and current and past elected officials. We received 1 comment from a adjacent landowner, well, not even adjacent, a landowner that has a pipeline that runs through the site, just identifying potential impacts on their pipeline and pointing out that the applicant will need to do some work with a right of way and easements. And then one comment identifying potential issues related to lithium ion battery technologies. So that's what you'll see in the comment packet itself. Of course, you will hear more directly from people tonight. The applicant also provided their own written comments regarding its exception request. So just pointing out what's already in the record. And I think that is the end of my presentation. So unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over to Chair. Sorry. I said, that's the end of my presentation. And yeah, unless there's any questions from the council, I will be done.
Any questions from council? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. This is the public hearing on the draft proposed order on the application for site certificate for the Sunstone Solar Project. I, Kent Howe, Energy Facility Siting Council Chair, am serving as the presiding officer for this hearing. Today is August 22, 2024. The time is 5:55 p.m. This public hearing is being held at an Energy Facility Siting Council meeting in person here at the Maxwell Event Center in Hermiston. This hearing is also being held via a WebEx webinar with a call-in option for those who cannot participate in person or via webinar. Tonight's hearing is being recorded. The presentations, written comments, and oral testimony are part of the decision record for the application for the facility. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an opportunity for the public reviewing agencies, council, and the applicant, if they wish to do so, to present oral and written testimony on the request in the department's draft proposed order. The 35-day public comment period on the draft proposed order is scheduled to close at the conclusion of tonight's public hearing. We need to raise it or wave it slide up there. So pursuant to OAR 345-015-0220 sub 5, sub A, and sub B, please note the following. A person who intends to raise any issue that may be the basis for a contested case must raise the issue in person at the hearing or in a written comment submitted to the department before the deadline stated in the notice of the public hearing. And B, a person who intends to raise any issue that may be the basis for a contested case must raise the issue with sufficient specificity to afford the council, the department, and the applicant an adequate opportunity to respond, including a statement of facts that support the person's position on the issue. Next slide, please. This slide represents the order for tonight's hearing and testimony on the record of the DPO. First, the applicant, then members of the public, then members of the council, and finally, the certificate holder will be allowed to respond to any comments. If attendees wish to submit written comments at the hearing to staff, they may do so. I will call on each person interested in providing oral testimony, starting with the certificate holder, then members of the public here in person, and then on the webinar, then on the phone. And then the next.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just for the record, Todd Cornett, just as a clarification. So I think we did some copy and pasting and kind of missed some. So the fourth bullet should be applicant and then, so this is probably a copy and paste from draft proposed order hearing on an amendment. So there's a little bit mixing and matching, but it should be applicant and applicant, not certificate holder.
Yeah, okay. So then, yeah, there we go. For any individuals wishing to provide oral testimony during tonight's hearing, for the record, please state the following with your testimony. Full name with spelling, name of organization or group you're representing, and physical mail or email address. Is the applicant here tonight and do they wish to provide testimony? Okay, you're there.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
before you go to
Councilor
testimony,
Devlin.
before you go to testimony, I just wanted to put something on the record.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, this is not a conflict of interest. I just wanted to state for the record that a person that I've known for many years is in the audience, Randall Edwards, former state treasurer, former state representative. He contacted me earlier this month because he is on a task force created by, created by Senator Wyden and Governor Kotek. And he mentioned that he was involved with the Sunstone project. At that time, I indicated to him that since we are a quasi judicial body, I could not discuss that project. And he understood that and respected that. We met and talked for 2 hours about transmission, which is the subcommittee he has been put on for this task force, which is on clean tech manufacturing and clean tech energy. And so we talked for 2 hours on transmission issues, and the issue of Sunstone never arose. And I don't actually know his capacity relative to Sunstone, but I did want to put it on the record that we've known each other for 31 years, but we have not discussed the project at all outside this meeting.
okay, thank you. So, okay, the applicant, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Maybe we'll all do our names and then I'll start. So I'm Logan Stevens, LOGAN STEPHENS with Pine Gate Renewables.
Good afternoon. I'm Ariel Stavitsky, STAVITSKY with Stoll Reeves, outside counsel for Pine Gate.
And my name is Jeff Fox, JEFFFOX, with Fox Energy Strategies. I'm employed by Sunstone Solar. Get this on.
Great. Good afternoon, Chair Howell and council members, and thank you for the opportunity to provide applicant comments on the draft proposed order for our Sunstone Solar project. My name is Logan Stevens. I'm Vice President of Project Development at Pine Gate Renewables. Pine Gate is the developer and sponsor of Sunstone Solar. My role at Pine Gate involves leading our development team in the West, as well as personally leading the development effort for the Sunstone project. On behalf of the project team at Pine Gate and our consultants at Tetra Tech, Eco Northwest, Stoll Reeves, Fox Energy Strategies, and EDJE Consulting, we would like to thank the council, the department, Chris Clark for all of his great work, Morrow County, our participating landowners, and the dozens of other stakeholder groups that we've built relationships with and collaborated with over the last few years to bring this project application forward to you. Throughout that time, we've worked hard to identify potential impacts and address those in ways that are responsive to stakeholder concerns and in accordance with the values of the local community. We appreciate Morrow County's vision of a future focused around agriculture, energy, and economic development. And we're proud of the work that we've accomplished together with all of these different groups, and hope that the project will set a good example for large-scale solar development in the state of Oregon. A bit of background on Pine Gate Renewables for folks who may not be familiar with us. We're a privately held developer, owner, operator of utility scale solar and storage facilities across the United States. We currently have over 275 employees working on over 20 gigawatts of development assets, in addition to more than 100 operating assets, 17 of which are here in the state. As the sponsor of the Sunstone Solar project, Pine Gate is committed to providing the financial backing, expertise, and resources to support the project. Apologies, I know Chris covered some of these points already, but just to reiterate some key facts about the project. In our application, we've proposed constructing a 1,200 megawatt solar facility with up to 1,200 megawatts times 6 hours of energy storage. We're sited on up to 9,442 acres of private land. The facility will interconnect to an existing 230 kV transmission line operated by Umatilla Electric Co-op. And that line was developed by UEC for the purpose of enabling renewable energy facilities in the southern part of Morrow County. The project is expected to be constructed in phases from 2026 to 2029, as Chris laid out. And recently, we've begun discussions with Solve Energy to potentially become the main engineering, procurement, and construction project contractor for the project. Solve is a highly accomplished contractor with experience building large solar facilities in Oregon, and they have solid relationships with the local unions as well. Once operational, the power generated by the project will flow across UEC's system up onto BPA's system. And our origination team is in active discussions with several utilities and large power users in the region who are capable of taking delivery across BPA's system. Lastly, the proposed facility is expected to have a 40-year operating life. Go. So this map from the application shows the location of Sunstone in purple, just off the southeast corner of the U.S. Navy bombing range. The blue and white dotted line, which may be a little hard to see from here, represents that existing UEC transmission line coming south out of Boardman. Bombing Range Road runs kind of right alongside that line all the way down, which provides access to the site from the north. In addition to Highway 207, which provides access from the northeast and southwest. This facility layout from the application represents the maximum potential build out of the facility, the maximum footprint, with the site boundary in purple and the proposed solar arrays in light blue. There are several areas in red that are excluded from development, including the Sand Hollow feature and several tracts of land reserved by our participating landowners, either to continue farming or to keep as residences. To connect the facility with UEC's system, UEC will build a new switchyard near the northwest corner of the site. And we wanted to note that the council has previously approved the Boardman to Hemingway 500 kV line, which crosses our site. It comes in from the east, cuts across, and then turns north, kind of towards the western edge of our site. And that line corridor affects nearly all of our participating landowners. Sunstone has no plans to connect to that line, but we have been in discussions with Idaho Power and PacifiCorp about working around that corridor and getting any necessary crossing agreements to go underneath. For our comments on the draft proposed order today, we would like to focus on highlighting a few aspects of the project that we believe provide the council a strong basis to approve the requested Goal 3 exception and ultimately approve the site certificate. We appreciate the department's findings on the locational dependency analysis and the recommendation that council find the facility is locationally dependent based on its proximity to the existing transmission and transportation corridors that I mentioned previously. as well as other energy and transmission facilities in the vicinity. Many of those other facilities are easy to spot here, including transmission lines, the retired Boardman coal plant, and the replacement Carty generating station there to the northwest. Major gas pipeline, several wind facilities, and other solar facilities as well. If this map was zoomed out a little bit further, you would see even more generation, transmission, and load infrastructure around the city of Boardman to the north. So this area of Morrow County represents an emerging clean energy corridor and is really poised to become a key renewable energy hub for the state and the region. Another key aspect of the project relative to the requested Goal 3 exception is that it's sited fully within the Butter Creek critical groundwater area. This designation has made it extremely challenging for our participating landowners to secure adequate rights and allocations to economically irrigate their land. We certainly appreciate the nuances of Oregon's classification system for high value farmland. However, as a practical matter, this site has virtually no irrigation potential. This is a very complex topic on which we provided a lot of extensive detailed information in our application. We appreciate the department's analysis and recommendations in this section of the DPO and would be happy to provide any additional information to support the council's deliberations. This map from the state's Oregon Explorer tool just shows the project boundary fully within the Butter Creek critical groundwater area. The Ella Butte classified groundwater area is off to the west there in the light blue. Sunstone is a well-sited facility with respect to resources protected by the council. We are completely avoiding highly erodible soils, big game winter range, threatened and endangered species habitat, wetlands, and jurisdictional waters. We're also not impacting any protected areas, recreational opportunities, or scenic resources. We've worked to mitigate impacts to cultural resources, and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation have provided a letter acknowledging all of their concerns have been addressed. There's a very small amount, less than 0.5% of the project site of category 4 and 5 habitat that will either be avoided or mitigated. For the mitigation option, we've worked with the Nature Conservancy and state agencies to identify a suitable mitigation site on the nearby Lindsay Prairie Preserve and committed to fund any mitigation that ends up being necessary. Sunstone will bring a massive amount of investment to Morrow County, which will benefit many sectors of the local economy, including the agricultural sector. We'd like to highlight a few of the key local economic benefits for the council's consideration, all backed by modeling and analysis from Eco Northwest. Over the 4-year construction period, Sunstone is expected to support 541 full-time equivalent jobs and $28 million of annual labor income in Morrow County. And we expect a large portion of that will be union labor. Over the operational period, Sunstone is expected to support 8 full-time equivalent jobs and $531,000 of annual labor income. Modeled 40-year tax revenues from the site are expected to total $593 million, compared to $3 million under the current use. And in addition, lease payments to participating landowners will help keep property in their families and support their continued investment in the local, in their local agricultural operations. All of these investments work and compound together to either directly or indirectly benefit the local agricultural economy in one form or another, as we've described in more detail in the comment letter that's in your packet. Yep, perfect. And as Chris alluded to earlier, as an extension of our local economic benefits package, we've worked with Morrow County officials, Morrow County grain growers, Morrow Soil and Water Conservation District, and other stakeholders to propose what we've called an agricultural mitigation plan. Again, backed by modeling and analysis from Eco Northwest. Our proposal commits the project to invest an additional $1,179 per acre at the start of construction into a fund with local and state oversight that will fund projects and programs specifically supporting wheat farming in Morrow County. Over the past 2 years, we've worked to craft this proposal with input from a variety of stakeholders with agricultural expertise at the local and state level. We identified and modeled 2 projects that are currently in need of funding. One is a cost share program for local farmers to purchase precision weed management equipment. The other is improving and expanding the North Lex grain elevator, which is located just south of our project site. We also built flexibility into the proposal so that the fund's advisory committee can identify even better projects between now and the start of construction if they choose. Taking the currently identified projects, we conservatively modeled an investment of $9.6 million, generating $11.1 million of benefit, representing an overall net benefit to the local agricultural economy. We really do appreciate the department's recommendation that our proposal be counted towards the mitigation of impacts prong of the Goal 3 exception test. However, we also believe that the project's net economic benefits to local agriculture should be considered as another reason for the council to grant the Goal 3 exception. We've provided more details and analysis on this topic in our written comments and would be happy to provide any additional information needed to help support the council's deliberations. In closing, we would again just like to express our appreciation to the Morrow County community, to our landowners, and all of the stakeholders who from the beginning have been so receptive to working with us and making this project the best that it can be. Having developed solar projects myself all over the country for the last 13 years, I can say this community and the rigorous permitting process administered by the department and the council rank right at the top of my list. It's always a great experience coming out to Oregon and to Morrow County, and we look forward to continuing our work here on Sunstone. Thank you.
Any questions from council? Councilor Devlin.
Yeah, excuse me. Just 2 quick questions, and you don't have to depend upon oral answers. If you want to respond in writing, that's fine. The project total size is about just under 15 square miles. I live in the city of Tualatin, which has 29,000 people approximately, and is 8.4 square miles. While you do have a tremendous number of people that will be involved in constructing the project, you have 8 FTE approximately to manage the project once it's constructed. And obviously, there'll be some involvement there for more than 8 hours. Some coverage for 24 hours. You may have other projects in the area where you have other staff. And I'm familiar, in hydroelectric systems, how they've modernized, and sometimes very large hydroelectric systems that used to have 50 staff on board now have 5 because of SCADA systems and others. How do you manage 14.5 square miles with eight staff, or 14.75. And the second question is, this is the largest amount of storage that I have actually seen for any project, which I think is generally something that's positive. And this is not a statement relative to whether I think the project should be approved or disapproved. But that amount of storage, you could hold on to the power you have until you can get a better price for the power. In theory, you could actually take power off the grid at a lower price and sell it at a higher price. I'm just curious about what the intent is. The intent has nothing to do with how I feel about the project. I'm just trying to understand how systems are changing.
Great. Yes, thank you, Councilor Devlin, and would love to give you a kind of more complete technical answer on both of those questions in writing. At a high level, what we've modeled is 8 full-time equivalent jobs over the course of a year. So there will be periods where there's nobody on site because everything's working normally. There's nothing to do. There will be other times where there's more people on site because there's routine maintenance going on or reactive maintenance if there's something that needs to be fixed, grounds maintenance, et cetera. But yeah, would love to kind of dig into that question deeper in some written comments.
I assume that many of your systems are going to be monitored remotely and
Yes.
adjusted as needed.
Yes.
And Councilmember Devlin, Jeff Fox, again with the Sunstone Solar team. I just wanted to also mention that currently, in its current land use, the land supports 6 full-time employee equivalents. So this actually represents a net increase in the number of people. And my point in bringing that up isn't as a tit for tat, but it's just saying that managing this amount of ground can be highly automated. And that is the story of a lot of Eastern Oregon communities, right? And so there's a tremendous amount of work that can be done on a large landscape, especially when you achieve economies of scale with relatively few employees, I guess.
And then to respond just at a high level to the storage question as well, we're seeing a trend kind of across the West of most solar projects having a storage component. It's typically on a 1-to-1 megawatt basis. So if you have 1,200 megawatts of solar, you want 1,200 megawatts of storage. The duration of the storage kind of varies, but this is more or less a commercially driven trend. So a lot of these large power users are looking for storage to kind of shape and firm the delivery of that power to suit their needs. All of that said, we have not made any final decisions on whether this project will have storage or how much it will have. We have tried to represent in our application the maximum conceivable amount so that we're only going down in impacts. But over the next 18 months or so leading up to construction, as we work through contracting and everything, a lot of those final design decisions and technology selections will be made at that time. So. Great.
Councilor Byer.
Thank you. This isn't a question as much as a comment, if this will quit beeping, but it's not related to any council standards, but thank you for your outreach to the local community. Boy, I mean, we don't often get this many people to our meetings. So we appreciate the effort you've made. It really makes the process that much more robust and helps us understand the issues.
Thank you, Councilor Byer. We appreciate the recognition.
Any other questions or comments from council? Vice Chair Condon?
Thank you. Cindy Condon, just a quick question. If I'm not mistaken, this is a large project for you, a much larger project. And I'm just curious about what you found in this process that is different from those small and potential risks or that have been discussed through this process to bring us here?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Condon. That's a great question that I could spend a lot of time thinking about and answering. But, off the top, I think, one of the big takeaways for us taking on a large project like this is just the economies of scale are really powerful. A 1,200 megawatt facility compared to 12 100 megawatt facilities, you just get that much more concentration of resources, efficiencies, in construction and design and operations, et cetera, which just delivers a really competitive, product to the market. Jeff was involved in citing this project early on and have to commend his good work for picking a really good site. I mean, in terms of 10,000 acres with very little environmental and cultural impacts and things like that is really great. And I won't say made our job easy going through the kind of technical rigor of the process, but certainly we think, produced a really, really strong project in that sense. I guess the other element that comes to mind is just the inability to kind of construct it all in one go. We need to kind of phase it out and build it, in chunks so that we have overlapping disciplines and crews aren't trying to do too much all at once. So that'll be interesting to kind of dig deeper into as we get into this upcoming pre-construction phase and anticipate probably coming back with some sort of amendment request to really flesh that out.
Thank you. And if I can just follow up with a question just based on the phased approach. As the market also is changing, I mean, it's so much energy coming on, not only here, but other places. And do you anticipate that what you see in the growth of that market, the facilities coming on, certainly the energy needs here, that affecting your phased approach that may call for an amendment later? I mean, are you seeing anything out there that suggests changes in your phased approach, given the market?
Slowing down.
Slowing down is the risky part of it. Yes.
I don't know that I'm the best position to speak on this. We might want to respond in writing, but I can just say as somebody who's followed energy markets for over a decade, I don't think there's any risk of slowing down. I don't think with all the growth we're seeing in renewables that we're anywhere close to satiating the coming demand for clean energy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and I would agree with that. There's way more demand for this type of power than there are good projects to supply it. So I don't think that's going to be a limiting factor in our ability to build it out. It'll be other things like, interconnection timelines with utilities and things like that.
Yeah. And I think for the first time, the electric industry, utility industry, electric production becomes competitive, much more competitive, which is a landscape that we haven't seen before. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Stevens and Mr. Fox. And
Ms. Stavitsky.
Well, yeah, thank you too. Before I open the hearing up to public testimony, I want to remind the public that prior to the close of the record, you may submit written testimony in a variety of ways: the comment portal, email, and handing in your written comment tonight. And written comments are really valuable to us. We do read them. If you're going to submit testimony, please just summarize your written comment, and that's fine. As noticed in the agenda, the duration of the time for individual commenters will be Well, was going to be 7 minutes, but we've got 14 people wanting to testify. We need to find out how many are on the phone and on the webinar that are going to add to that.
Thank you, Chair Howe. At this point, let me just remind people how to raise their hand because I don't know who all wants to comment. So if you're on the webinar, at the bottom of the main windows is a set of icons. Click on that participant and there's a hand icon right there and you can go ahead and click that. That will raise your hand if you were wanting to comment. If you are on the phone, press *3 on your keypad to raise your hand, and when you're finished commenting, you can press *3 again to lower your hand. I do have one hand raised. And that is Representative Greg Smith.
Okay. Okay, so with that, I think we have a little over an hour's worth of testimony if I limit people to 5 minutes. That seems kind of reasonable. I hope folks agree with that. So with that, are there individuals, well, let's see, I've got 14 here that have provided comment, and I guess what I'll do is just start reading off the first one, and it was
Trying to find the 5 minutes.
John Hanner.
John gave you a.
Okay, come on up. Oh,
He gave you a written comment.
oh, that's got it. Okay, there was 2 cards here, so okay, Ken Grebe.
Yeah, I'm Ken Grebe, Kengrebe. I'm representing Grebe Farms Incorporated, and our address is 72540 Alpine Lane. And every time I practice this, it only took 3 minutes, so we'll see. As I stated, I'm Ken Grebe. I'm a property owner in Sunstone Solar Project, and I'm the representative here tonight from Grebe Farms Incorporated. I'm a 3rd-generation farmer with most of our farm's current holdings in my family since 1952. In the distant past, the farm once supported irrigated agriculture and the cultivation of a variety of crops. However, in the 1980s, the declining water allocations forced the farm to begin being exclusively farmed in dryland wheat. For a while, the farm utilized an existing groundwater right to supplement the area's low rainfall with irrigation for our wheat, but as the water right was under allocated by the state of Oregon, investments into maintaining and improving our irrigation systems and infrastructure did not make financial sense, and we discontinued any supplemental irrigation on our wheat in 2017. As FSEC staff have concluded in the draft proposed order, the full use of our water right is not possible due to our location in the Butter Creek critical groundwater area. In recent years, it has become more difficult to produce a successful wheat crop as input costs continue to rise among fluctuating market prices for wheat. We are in an extremely low rainfall area, which often leads to low crop yields. And many years we have to rely on our crop insurance to make ends meet. Our farm is somewhat of a crossroads in energy development in Eastern Oregon. We have 3 natural gas pipelines on our property. A very recently constructed gas compressor station is surrounded by our property. 2.5 miles of the Blue Ridge transmission line runs through our property, to which this Sunstone project will interconnect. And FSEC recently approved the siting for 2 miles of the Boardman to Hemingway transmission line to run directly through the middle of our farm. We also have wind turbines sited both and to the north, south, and to the west of our property. And it's throughout all this energy development, we have successfully adapted our farming to the new energy uses. But at some point, it has become clear to us that our farm is better positioned to be part of the energy production surrounding it. rather than a simple pass-through for it. Indeed, others, including Umatilla Electric Cooperative and former Governor Kate Brown, have referenced our area as part of an emerging green energy corridor. We agree and would like to be more directly involved in the energy economy that surrounds us. As a past Morrow County Commissioner, I have participated in many meetings with large companies that have come into our area in recent years. I know the benefits these companies can bring to rural areas like ours. The jobs and extra funding for schools and taxing districts is very valuable to our community. This project will bring both to Morrow County. I believe Pine Gate Renewables has done an exceptional job integrating themselves into Morrow County's community. Their agricultural mitigation plan goes well beyond what other developers have done for the area while pursuing activities that have made an impact to our agricultural economy. I'd like to thank you for your opportunity, for my opportunity to comment upon the draft proposed order for Sunstone Solar. I hope you approve the project and we can get moving forward. Thank you. Are there any questions? Great. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, you are unmuted on your mic if you'd like to go ahead and provide your comment.
Thank you. It's appreciated. Good evening. For the record, my name is State Representative Greg Smith. 190 Rock Street in the beautiful town of Heppner, Oregon, 97836. And I'd like to begin by thanking the Energy Facility Siting Council for coming to Hermiston and District 57. We're most grateful that you're here with us. I'm here to lend a voice of support for Pine Gate Renewables and the project that is before you. And you're going to hear arguments this evening, very positive arguments about the economic growth that this project's going to create, the tax base this is going to create, the potential jobs this is going to create. And that's all accurate and true. What I want each and every one of you to walk away from Hermiston knowing is that the property owners, Ken and Carrie Grebe, William Doherty, Brian Doherty, Patricia Matheny, Shane and Sarah Matheny, Gerald Ashbeck, Tony Ashbeck, and Jack Monagle are A-plus citizens. These are folks who have given and given and given to Morrow County and to the region. And they're responsible landowners. They're very capable landowners. And at the end of the day, they always exercise tremendous wisdom in the decision-making that they undertake. And so I'd hope you'd realize that the relationship between these local folks and Pine Gate Renewables is a positive one. It's one that I strongly support. I greatly appreciate the work they have done in reaching out to the community, to neighbors, to the public, to be as transparent as possible with this project and to seek support. And I just want to leave you with the final comment. I support this project. Councilor Devlin, it's great seeing you, my friend. And I hope you'll give this project the strongest consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Any questions from the council? Okay, thank you.
Have a great evening.
The next person we have is Nick Edgman.
Hello, my name is Nick Edgman, NickEdgmon. My address is 2312 East Fawn Hill Drive in Eagle, Idaho. I'm here representing Solve Energy, and I'm speaking in favor of the project. A little bit about Solve. Solve Energy has been brought on board to potentially be the EPC. That stands for Engineering, Procurement, and Construction Contractor for this project, as well as the O&M contractor, the operation and maintenance of the project. Solve Energy has been building solar power plants since 2008. and I've been lucky enough to be a part of the company since then. We have done about 20 projects in the state of Oregon, starting in around 2011. I personally was a assistant project manager on projects back in 2012 outside of Ontario and Vail, Oregon, which was my first experience working in the state of Oregon. The total capacity that we've installed in the state of Oregon is about 2.6 gigawatts across the 20 projects. Solve Energy last year was the number 3 rated EPC contractor in the country. We have a lot of experience building solar projects across the country. I personally have seen firsthand the positive impact that these projects can have on communities, from bringing in money to local businesses, hotels, restaurants. There's always something we need from a hardware store, right? So every day there's someone's going to the hardware store to buy something. It's been really, really cool to see us come into these local communities and impact it for the better. We take our responsibility as being good neighbors very seriously. We aim to hire as much local labor as we possibly can. Generally, it's over 80%. Sometimes it's 90 or above. So typically the way a project is structured is the supervision team, which would be the superintendent and the project manager and the lead foreman, are a traveling team. That makes up about 20 to 25 people of the 300 plus that you saw earlier. And the balance is local labor. There's obviously a lot of benefit to local labor, what it brings into the community, but also it benefits us as well. It's better for us to have the local labor. Frankly, it's cheaper to build it without having to pay the per diem. So we're highly motivated to hire local labor as much as we possibly can. I guess I just have one other comment on the comment that was brought up earlier on the 7 or 8 full-time equivalent employees while the site is operating. While that is accurate and true, I have seen firsthand how many temporary construction projects have been created on these solar projects. And those people have a knack for it. They're willing, they're good, they're hard workers, and we bring them on full time. There's dozens and dozens of people that I know that are now in supervision roles that started as a local hire on a project. And it's really cool to see people build careers in the solar industry. And obviously solar is probably not going anywhere in Oregon anytime soon, and it's probably only going to grow. So that's a great opportunity to create careers and build full-time employment. So thank you for the time. If there's any questions, I can answer those now.
Thank you, Mr. Edgman. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Doherty.
Hello, my name is Brian Doherty, BrianDoherty. Our address is 70516 Highway 207, Lexington, Oregon. Highway 207, you see, go through the project. I submitted a letter as well, but I'm going to divert from that a little bit and say I am a 4th generation farmer on the land that's involved in the project. And after the project's completed, I will continue to farm on 1,100 acres, and we may explore other opportunities with the revenue that we get in rent from the project. But I did want to say, building on what Ken said, we do not have many opportunities to diversify, or any really, after the critical groundwater area went in. So this project is very welcome in our family and to the other farms I know around us, in that we get to finally have some diversity in our income streams. And it's been a real ray of hope to our family, because it's tough to farm where we do. That's all. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Shane Matheny or Matheny, I bet. Sorry.
Sorry. Chair.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Doherty, I just have to say, we all talk about, yes, we read the things that people submit, but you would not be able to read the emotion that you just displayed. So appreciate you coming forward. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. Okay, Mr. Matheny.
Okay, Shane Matheny, ShaneMatheny. I'm with Matheny Properties LLC, and our address is 74596 Alpine Lane, Lexington, 97839. I'm just going to read the letter that I submitted to you. It says, I reside at and farm the Matheny Properties LLC lands in the Sunstone Solar Project. The farm has been in our family since 1939. Like any family farm, we are careful with our land and cautiously consider our options before committing to a course of action. We have been pleased and are eager to see the project move forward. We are not only participating in the Sunstone Solar Project by leasing land, but we will also be actively farming 340 acres directly adjacent to the project. We have been impressed with Pine Gate's thoughtful approach to construction and operation, and we are confident they will do a good job in managing the project for neighboring landowners. I will also continue to be a farm producer on other lands in the area, including land that I currently farm with my family. The revenue my family gains from Sunstone Solar might allow for increased investment in those farming operations or even new farming operations altogether. For example, this last year, I took out 900 acres of leased ground out of its CRP program and back into grain production, in part because I expect to have fewer acres in production once the Sunstone project moves forward. Once Sunstone Solar begins construction on our property, I'll be looking for more opportunities to put lands that should be in grain production back into active wheat farming. My family has long and deep ties to agriculture in the area. I simply wouldn't pursue solar development for our land if I did not believe it was compatible with agriculture in the area. Not only do I believe it can be and will be compatible, I believe Pine Gate Renewable has gone above and beyond their duty to ensure a sustainable agriculture community in Morrow County with their proposed agriculture mitigation fund. Pine Gate Renewable has already shown a great deal of community support and awareness. They have donated, volunteered, and supported our schools and small community. This is a great example of who they are as a company, since they have already done this before the project has even started. I look forward to seeing what can be done with those funds and in the county with Sunstone Solar operating as a key part of our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matheny. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Next is Daniel Persifield. Daniel Percifield, Persifield. Okay. I'll move on. Nobody recognizes that name, huh? Or something similar to it? Okay. Oh, the next one is Donovan Persifield. Okay, Donald, whoa, we got another one yet. Oh, they must have left and written down because we have Donald again. Daisy Goebel. I see Tamara.
Thank you. Thank you. Are we on? We can hear. Are we on?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and council members of council. My name is Tamara Mabott. I'm the planning director for Morrow County, and with me is Daisy Goebel, our principal planner. Morrow County just about an hour ago submitted our comments. We had to wait for the Board of Commissioners ink to dry, and we got it in time. So Commissioner Grail, I appreciate your comment. We're going to add the emotion to the letter that the county submitted, okay? Good. So first of all, thank you for allowing the opportunity for public testimony. Morrow County very much supports this project. We've been working with the Pine Gate team and the landowners for several years now. We agree primarily with staff's recommendations. We just wanted to call out a few details that maybe the planners in the room might appreciate more than others. One of the important points I wanted to point out and stress, the Board of Commissioners has several topics the county is sharing. One has to do with weed abatement, and weed abatement is a very significant challenge in our area. We've worked closely with your siting council staff. Previously, with a previous project where we submitted comments, we asked the developer, we asked for a condition to support an FTE, and staff and council denied that request. Our weed coordinator isn't able to be here today, but we cannot stress strongly enough the importance of weed abatement early in the process. So if you don't catch it early, you don't catch it when it first arrives, you're playing catch up for about 10 years. So to that regard, where you've set the precedent where you would not fund an FTE to help monitor and do the weed abatement, we just wanted to remind staff and council that it's a state site certificate and you're in first position to do weed abatement and enforcement of all of those compliance conditions. So it is, it's very challenging, and happy to visit more about that. We talked about traffic impacts. They've agreed to include a road use agreement. We're recommending consultation with our emergency manager on the fire prevention and mitigation. In terms of housing impacts, it's one of those cumulative impacts. You don't really have a cumulative impact standards, and when you take 900 employees plus multiple other projects in Morrow County, all of which conclude that there's enough housing in the area. But as a practical matter, we all know and understand that's not true. So one of Daisy's suggestions that the board agreed with is to at least allow some reporting so we know generally where those people are coming from. And Pine Gate has really set the bar very high for working with the community. A couple of years ago, I invited them to a meeting with the cities in the county to see if any cities wanted to take some initiative with developing housing or temporary housing or an RV park. So they've really gone above and beyond. The last comment, we could really get into the weeds about the goal 3 piece, and we agree with Pine Gate's comments. We find it unfortunate that the mitigation plan wasn't raised to the same level as to show compliance with those goal 3. There's 6 opportunities to justify a reasons exception, and we think staff minimize that to some extent. And we love working with your staff. They're smart. They're really professional people. It was not in any way, shape a quid pro quo. It wasn't a pay as you go. What you heard Pine Gate say is they hired Eco Northwest twice. That's in and of itself an expensive endeavor. First, to justify and show what the direct and indirect costs would be. And then secondly, they came back with the advice of your siting council staff to show how that investment would directly relate to mitigating dryland wheat production. And that's exactly what they did. Daisy has a couple more points to raise about the goal 3. I would just say in conclusion that, again, the county hopes you support the project, but maybe take some time to shuffle around some of those priorities, particularly in that goal 3 section of your DPO.
Thank you. Do I get another 5 minutes or 30 seconds?
You can have another 5.
Thank you. I won't make it that long, but I appreciate your guys'
We
time.
appreciate
And
that.
we appreciate staff as well as the applicants' efforts to work with the county closely on addressing our concerns early on and throughout the process. I want to just reiterate everything that Tamara said. As a perspective matter, we need to be concerned about cumulative impacts. We really need, I know it's not something that the council's addressed specifically, but we just want to reiterate that in our communities, it does make a huge difference when you have up to 1,000 employees versus 6 projects with up to 1,000 employees, and it really makes a huge difference. So when we talk through housing impacts, we talk about weeds, we want to reiterate just our perspective that the outcomes matter just as much as the real in the weeds details. That it's great that we have these wonderful, beautiful plans, but when the outcomes are not consistent with those plans, we're the ones kind of left holding the bag. And I think it's unfortunate in some cases that we have to kind of do this as a, we learn as we go type of situation, but we want to just make sure to, again, just really reiterate the importance of weed abatement early and often, fire mitigation, and just taking a broad approach to looking at housing impacts and looking at the outcomes. So our recommendation on housing, again, is to have a reporting element where we're actually seeing the outcomes of their housing plan, not just their outcome of like coordination on the housing plan. And then as far as the goal exception, just what Tamara said, we really find that the work that they've put into really providing an economic benefit. It's not just a mitigation to counteract an economic loss, but they have really put in the effort and the time and the money to figure out a way to make this project agriculturally beneficial and economically beneficial to the community. And so as such, we would like to see the council sort of adopt that local economic benefit as a reason to justify the goal exception rather than just adopting the mitigation plan as a countermeasure to perceived economic losses. Thank you.
While Stacy still has a minute, Chair, if I might, I want to stress the issues you heard from the landowners directly about water, and I know Councilperson Byer is very familiar with it. Again, it's sort of a technical piece in the findings where they offered above and beyond to actually forfeit those water rights. And that was above and beyond anything that they were required to do. And where that wasn't really given the credit, it's a little unfortunate. And whether or not that specifically met the letter of the law, I think it met the intent of the law and should be, again, raised to the level that it helps in part justify one of those 6 goal 3 exception criteria. We struggle greatly in the basin with lack of water. Where we have water, we're really fruitful and productive. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilor?
Councilmember Condon, just a quick question. I'm not a planner. I don't know much about it. But with respect to the housing, what is it that you would be looking for in a report? I mean, you're concerned about cumulative housing. This is one project. We've got other stuff going on. So what is it that that report would look like?
Thank you. I want to just reiterate, we really appreciate the staff and the applicants working with us on it. They've put together the idea of having a housing plan, which is something that in and of itself is already going in the right direction. We're very appreciative of it. But when we look at the reporting elements or kind of what does that mean, we just want to see that it's not just a plan, but we actually seeing the impacts or the effects of that. So rather than relying on old data about how much available housing there is, that I think a lot of these projects are all relying on sort of the same data, the same number of housing, the same housing units. And for us, we just want to be able to look at, aggregate data, not specific information, but aggregate data about how many people really are commuting from Benton County, Washington, how many people are, finding local housing, and how many people are staying in RVs on like farmland, for example. That's just the information we'd like to have. And I think it would also support us in being able to provide more specific recommendations on future similar projects.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Mabott and Ms. Goebel.
Yeah.
The next one is Irene. I kind of assume that might be Irene Gilbert.
Irene Gilbert, 2310 Adams Avenue, and I represent, I'm co-chair with Stop Boardman to Hemingway. Also, I represent the public interest, my personal interest, and I wanted to start off by saying I have not been following this project closely, but I'm quite impressed by what I'm hearing here tonight. Okay, I'm impressed with what the developers have to say. I think that the fact that there's such limited response in terms of negative comments that you're hearing, it tells me that the developer has taken their role of right-siding seriously and talking with and communicating with the public that's impacted by this. So kudos there. I did want to remind council and hopefully the developer to pay attention to the people who do have concerns still that issuing a site certificate does not mean that they should be ignoring the concerns, and a positive outcome means that they will continue to work with them. I did want to also remind council that hopefully your role is not just considering comments, but it's also considering the public at large and the people that are not here. And I wanted to comment on the general standard, which is 345-022-000, which does establish your role as number one. It says that you will be reviewing all standards that are established under 469-501. That basically means that you're not just considering chapters 22, 23, and 24, but you are considering everything in terms of process and also your basic standards. And as I read those, what I see is you have three roles that you need to be meeting. One is, are you going to cite the project? Number two is, what kind of mitigation is going to be required or avoidance to meet your standards? And number three is having a process in place for tracking that the things that you're requiring are actually being done for the life of the project. So I hope when you're looking at these site certificates and this one, that you make sure that those things are in place. Also, as I was reading 345-22-000, I noticed that it directs the council to not use discretion in some specific standards. And the ones that they list are that organizational expertise, land use, retirement standards, and the protected areas standard. And this rule has actually recently been reinforced because the Oregon Supreme Court has said, and I believe it's Kaiser, that agencies don't have the authority for discretion if the rules are clear. And I think sometimes you're directed to use discretion on some of those rules that it says you can't use discretion. And so there's a Kaiser decision that put a bunch of criteria on use of discretion, like the rule has to be unclear. And now I believe it's a Nelson decision that basically ended the Chevron authority of agencies to make decisions. And that court case says that interpretation is the job of the courts and it is not the job of agencies. So I just encourage you to be very cautious when you're using discretion in deciding what is okay, and just keep in mind that resources are bigger than just, a small group of people. I'm thrilled that the public is actually supporting this because it's really the first project where I've seen the kind of positive response. And so I hope that the council approves the site certificate. From what I've seen, I hope the developer continues to work with those who have issues still. Thank you.
Any question? Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Next is Mike Aldred.
Good evening. My name is Mike Aldred, Mikealldritt. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the project. For one, as a lifelong resident of Morrill County. And for number two, as a representative of Iron Workers Local 29. I represent 1,500 iron workers throughout the state.
So I think we can speak more directly.
Sure. Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like I said, I represent 1,500 apprentice, active, and retired iron workers in the state. The reason I'm in support of the project on that end is living wage jobs, which are very important, full family benefits, and the ability to retire with dignity. That says a lot for the people, right? The developer's been great to work with. We've reached out They're always willing to come and talk with us, get involved in community events. So I would like to speak in favor of the project, and I would urge you to move forward with the project. Let's get it built. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldrich. Ryland Grimes.
My name is Rylan Grimes. That's RYLANGRIMES. And I'm a representative with IBW Local 112, which is the electricians union out of Kennewick, Washington. We represent 1,500 or 1,400 members in Northeast Oregon and Southeast Washington. We wanted to ensure that Pine Grove hires local contractors who follows all applicable licensing laws for the installation of the project. And that they follow area standard wages and obviously employ a local workforce. We'd also ask that they require their contractors to pay or provide full family health care. And we look forward to the possibility of helping them with that when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes. Any questions? Okay. And Danny Sandoval? Oh, no Danny Sandoval? Okay. Okay, Nancy, we're going to go to anybody else on the phone or the webinar. We've got through, I guess first I should ask, is there anybody else here tonight that wanted to speak? Okay, then let's check the phone and webinar one more time.
At this time, there are no hands raised.
And any star threes?
No, there are not.
Okay. Are there any council members that would like to provide comments to the department or the certificate holder? Secretary Cornett?
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Todd Cornett. And I just want to do a sort of a process reminder. This is a point where we've inserted into the process prior to the close of the record. The council will review the DPO after the close of the record and provide any comments that you have to staff so that we can make those changes, into the proposed order. However, right now, the record is still open. And that's important because if you have any significant issues or comments, it would be important to state those on the record because that would allow the applicant an opportunity to either respond to them tonight or request that the record remain open for them for a period of time to respond to them. So, you've had the draft proposed order, you've had the comments. So we want to make sure that if you do have anything significant or substantive, now is the time to, you will be able to do it later on, but now is the time where the applicant can actually respond to it into the record. So I just wanted to make sure that that process point was clear.
Councilor Byer?
Thank you. This is probably in our documentation because there were a lot of pages to get through. But if we can get a paragraph summarizing Water Resources Department's Butter Creek Critical Groundwater Area and exactly what those limits are on the property owners. And it's probably there, and I apologize if I didn't get to it. But I think that's an important foundational piece to help us tackle this, the issues surrounding the lack of irrigation water rights. So does that make sense? Is something we can just get a paragraph that documents the critical groundwater area? I see Tamara back there, and I'm sure that that exists, but it would be helpful as background.
Any other comments from council? Questions? Okay. As previously stated, the public comment period ends at the close of the hearing tonight. However, if requested by the applicant, the council may grant additional time to respond. Based on the comments received tonight and on the record, does the certificate holder wish to provide any responses while the record's still open, or would you like to request the record to remain open to allow you time to respond to anything else?
Thank you, Chair Howell. Tonight, we would just like to say thank you for all of the comments that were provided and for folks for making the trip out. We'd also like to say that we're generally supportive of the county's suggestions with regard to housing. However, we would like to take some additional time to review their comments, as well as some of the other comments that were made tonight and respond in writing. If we could possibly have until, towards the end of next week, that would be appreciated.
I don't see any problem with that. So, okay. Do we need to formally set that in?
Yeah,
Like,
so for the record, Todd Cornett,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I think it is important to set a date and time certain so that it's not vague. And so, I think, you've heard the comments. What's your interest? Would it be 5 p.m. Friday of next week or earlier in the week?
Just 1 week, I think, so Thursday.
So 5 p.m. on Thursday of next week.
That's September 3rd, 5 p.m. Okay, we set the time and date and time.
Thank you.
So yeah, then
It should be the 29th. 29th.
Am I wrong on the date?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, next Thursday is the 29th.
Yeah. So it's yes. Sorry. 29th, 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
That's the 29th of August. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Stevens. So I wanted to thank everybody that came out and gave public comment tonight. That was a good showing of interest and good comments, and people did a good job summarizing and keeping them brief. So it's now 7:12 p.m. on August 22nd, 2024, and the public hearing and public comment period on the draft proposed order for the application for site certificate for the Sunstone Solar Project is now closed. The time also now is 7:12, and the August 22, 23, 24 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council is now recessed until tomorrow morning at 8:30.